So hello everyone. We are live. So we are DeFindex, the earnings infrastructure for financial apps, and we welcome everyone to Chapter 5 of Interoperable podcast. Today we are diving into one of the most important topics in this industry, security in Web3. So before we begin, a quick reminder of who we are. So at DeFindex, we provide the infrastructure that enables wallets and apps to offer automated yield through DeFi on Stellar. Our focus is secure, transparent yield infrastructure that wallet can easily integrate. We will do a quick giveaway before we wrap. So if you are here, say hi in the chat and drop one question you are curious about. The best questions will earn some giveaway. So today's topic is security in Web3. We have these two amazing guests, Mark from Hana Wallet, the front line, the user experience, they have all the key management, self-custody of their wallets, and runtime verification. It's the security firm that makes sure that every piece of infrastructure, from smart contracts to other infrastructure, is secure. So let's talk about what you guys are building, what you are doing. So Everett, can you explain a little bit what you do and why it's important?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay? Or
yeah.
Cool. So I'm Everett Hildenbrandt. I'm at Runtime Verification. I'm the CEO, and we do basically code quality assurance broadly. So we take any piece of software that is safety critical, which is just kind of jargon for saying that it's not acceptable for that piece of software to fail, and we check it for problems. And there's all sorts of different techniques we can use for checking software for problems. We take kind of a formal verification approach to all of that because that's what a lot of our training is in. But we
can you explain in very few words what formal verification is?
Yeah, I'll do my best.
It's a very complicated topic, very complex.
What I normally tell people is formal verification is the process of mathematically modeling and proving the correctness of software, right? So you take software, you turn it into a mathematical model, and then you prove it correct. You actually don't have to only apply it to software. There's plenty of other realms that we can do formal verification, and we do it for system modeling like consensus protocols. I also do it just for normal engineering applications. Like imagine you're building a nuclear reactor and you want to model the correct behavior of the reactor here, meaning it doesn't melt down or it doesn't release radiation or something like that. That's another thing you can apply formal verification to, which is just mathematical modeling of systems. But in the case of smart contracts, where we're following kind of the code is law ethos, the most important thing is that the smart contract code is behaving correctly as expected. And so we build tools to do formal verification of smart contract code. And then we use those tools also for our clients to do audits and to make sure that things are working as expected. We also do a lot of other lighter weight techniques like fuzzing, code review, design review, specification, those sorts of things to whatever it is that's needed, because not all software has the same safety level as smart contracts, right? Some software it's okay if it breaks in some small ways or something like that. You have to understand your threat model first. So
great. And now Hana, Mark, can you tell us something about Hana, what you're building, why it's important?
I think of something. Yeah, well, thanks for having us, first of all. So if you haven't heard of us, Hana is a multi-chain non-custodial wallet. So we support many chains, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Sui, a bunch of other EVMs. But our main hub chain is Stellar. And then through Stellar, we connect to a lot of DeFi, sort of traditional finance payment mechanisms like MoneyGram. We have like a MasterCard, so you can move seamlessly between like the two, basically. So we have a mobile app and a Chrome extension. So when we think of security, obviously there's the technical aspect, which is securing the vault on the device. We're non-custodial, so we don't take the keys. They're always on the device, if it's in Chrome in a secure vault or in the mobile app on a secure vault. But we view security through the lens of the UX, like how do you protect the user from themselves? And if you've been in blockchain or crypto for more than 18 months or 2 years, you're like a frog in boiling water. Like you don't know how much you've already learned by just being here. So then you talk to someone who's not in that Web3 world and they just get lost immediately. So that's just a nightmare when you're trying to onboard like the next billion users into this ecosystem. So that's how we view security. Yes, you need the basics done, which is the technical aspect, but how do you actually allow users to get the utility of Web3 without all the risk? So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I saw a presentation at ETH Denver where they were talking about exactly that security at the wallet level, where they were saying, when was the last time you had one of your relatives fall for a phishing scam for their bank? It's probably not as common as it happens for crypto. And so something is wrong there on the front end side of security, just in terms of how people perceive and use these applications too. So very different area that we have to pay attention to as well.
I think in Web3 as well, you don't really have recourse as well. Like if you own the full stack, even if you're like fintech or traditional banking, you kind of can revert and undo, and there can be accountability for bad actors. It's a little bit more nuanced or complicated in Web3. So I think that's an interesting aspect as well. But,
yeah.
Great. So when we talk about protocol security, what layers are we referring to? Brett, if you can answer that.
Yeah. I mean, again, you have to know what your threat model is, right? And the best, the best thing to understand what your threat model is first to start with a specification. And so, if we're talking about a fully on-chain, totally permissionless application, not interacting with any external chain state, which is pretty rare, that's usually not the case. At least you need some sort of oracle or something feeding some sort of price in, which I think we'll talk a little bit about later. But then, your modeling is going to start at the smart contract level, right? Because that's your entire attack surface, right? But if you're talking about something that integrates with something off chain, like it maybe plugs into an actual bank, or it plugs into, I don't know, some flights points tracking app or something like that. I'm sure Hana wallet has all sorts of integrations off chain. Well, that increases your attack surface, right? And so we need to specify, okay, what are the important properties to hold for the entire ecosystem, right? Is the total supply of the balances should remain constant. We specify all these different properties about the ecosystem that are important. And then we understand for each property, okay, this property only is affected by the smart contract, but this property, it's affected by the smart contract and by the integration with the flights points tracking system, right? Okay, so now we have an idea of like, okay, we have the important properties. That's kind of our specification. And we have also the different components of the entire system, which can include node infrastructure, traditional finance infrastructure, some normal Web 2 stuff, some Web 3 stuff, maybe some physical hardware, whatever it is. And we've mapped each of those properties to the different components that it affects, right? And then you come up with the plan of how, only then, once you've kind of done that process of understanding the system, can you come up with a sane plan for attacking the security of the protocol, right? For making sure that you actually are addressing the concerns where they show up, because anyone can just pick up a piece of code and start reading it and try to find bugs in it. You will probably find bugs, like most code has bugs, but unless you understand the whole system, then you don't really know, okay, because this is a smart contract and because these are the properties that are important, we want to do formal verification of these specific arithmetic functions because they're kind of on the hot path for the security of the protocol. But these other parts of the smart contract, they're just some governance mechanisms that don't actually affect any of the security of the protocol. We'll just do normal code review for those. And then this other component, like the integration with the bank or with whatever is the external application, well, if that gives bad results, then it's actually acceptable because of how it interacts with the rest of the system. But if it stops working or if it stops being connected, that's unacceptable. So we'll do fuzzing to try to find ways that we can make that piece of software crash, right? So you kind of have to understand the whole system and understand the different components and where they're at. And that process we call design review at runtime verification, where we're kind of understanding how everything plugs in together. And then we pick the different parts of security that are important for different components there, right? And it's really different for every client. It's different for every threat model, different for different amounts of TVL even. Like the same protocol with only $10,000 in it is a lot different than the same protocol with $10 million in it, right? That's something where you have to make much different choices with regards to security. So really the security layer, it's all over. Like every piece of code, every piece of physical infrastructure, all the devices, all of those are part of the security layer. It really is a matter of like, what's the risk, and how much does that justify spending on the security of that component? So.
Great. And MJ, from the wallet's perspective, what does security means for users, for you, for interacting with all these other pieces that you have in Hana wallet?
Yeah, I think about kind of like in stages. Like previously it was like protect the private key, like that was the definition of security. Don't lose your seed phrase. Don't let it leak. That is super obvious, and that still stands true today. I guess depending on how you view the world, you mean like if you're sort of pro-custody or sort of pro-self-custody or non-custodial, like there's different aspects. But I think that things are a little bit looser now than they sort of used to be, but that still stands today. But I still think that's not old thinking, but we've advanced from that thinking. And now it's not about just securing like the key and everything like that. It's about making the user informed about what they're doing. Like we sort of talked before, if you kind of go and buy something online with, say, like a Visa or MasterCard, there is recourse. If that is stolen, you can call your bank and then they can talk to the fraud team and they can revert that. We don't really have that mechanism today in Web3. So you kind of need to be a bit more mindful about what you're doing. But as soon as we start saying, oh, I have my bank account basically, or involved assets in it, and I'm going to connect it to websites because I can do yield farming or I can swap this new token, and you start going into this sort of dark forest or this scary place of just like, it actually is very scary. So I think the first thing is like beyond securing like the account. Yeah, the Wild West. I think it's also about like getting the user informed about what they're doing. So it's surfacing like, okay, you're about to do something on this random website. So then like, this is actually what's going to happen. So simulation and just like parsing the data and sort of showing the user what they're actually going to do. That's kind of like, that's a minimum now. And then I think beyond that, the way that we view it is we think that native experiences is really what users need, because we're trying to build a wallet for like the next wave of users, more a non-custodial neobank. So a native experience, and that's what we did with DeFindex. Like you don't go to a website and connect Hana. You can do that in our Chrome, but I think that's like old thinking. I think like new world, next billion users, like actually protecting users is just having it purely native. So the threat model, or I'm not sure the right term, Everett, but kind of like the risk around that is different when it's a native experience. So that's kind of how we view it.
And also, I think you have to deal maybe with a lot of human engineer or like scammers all around, because you have like customer service, and maybe some people try to impersonate customer service. Have you had to deal with that?
Yeah, definitely. People just especially on X, you know what I mean? It's kind of not easy to get accounts shut down sometimes quick enough. All of our customer service is like an in-app experience. We obviously have like a website you can go to, but everything's in-app, and we think like that kind of protects the user. We say go to the app and then contact us, rather than doing it via Discord or anything like that. So I think simple workflows like that sort of help. But I think it's just keeping user informed about what they're doing. And the problem with that is I don't think we realize how much we've known by just being in this industry. Right. Like I've been in since 2017, but if you've been in 18 months, you just know a whole bunch of stuff. And I think we just, when a user comes in, they just get confused straight away. And that's when they make those decisions. When they have that decision tree, they're like, okay, I'm going to go to Discord and end up speaking to a scammer. Then we've lost it at that point. So it's protecting the user, and it's really simplifying it early on. So,
yeah, I guess if you're new to DeFi, it's already confusing anyway. And so, like, what's the little extra confusion that the scammer is putting on top of it? It's like, okay, well, maybe that seems reasonable as well, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I think also then another layer I don't know if it's really security, but it is risk. Like from a user's perspective, you can offer, say, like a higher yield, and it's in DeFi, and you've got this great UX and this onboarding, but it's also making sure that they understand the risk of the actual yield product that they're interacting with. 10%, 12% sounds good, and it is secure, to a level, and we can unpack that more. But from a product perspective, it's a higher yield because the market prices it at that yield, which means there's a different risk level to it. So how do you sort of like try and make these good, these opportunities available to users by navigating all of this stuff is part of what we're focused on.
Yeah. Well, that's why also we built DeFindex, because we thought that DeFi is very complex, but very helpful. Like you get very interesting returns, and we thought that talking with people like Mark, they can choose, or they can say like, well, this is a legit DeFi protocol. So the users don't need to think, or they don't need to explore some new protocols that can be full of scammers. And also we work with the audit bank that runtime verification is in the Stellar Audit Bank to make sure that our protocol it's safe. And just to know from the last year or this early 2026, Everett, if you have seen some common vulnerabilities in the Web3 space.
One thing that keeps coming up over and over again, which is surprising at first, but later makes sense, is just arithmetic errors, right? So when you're working with smart contracts on most blockchains, they used fixed point arithmetic for calculating the numbers, right? So you do multiplications in fixed point arithmetic and divisions and additions, all of these operations. And most people's mental model of when they're thinking about numbers is actually the real numbers, where you do have proper division or proper multiplication and everything. So that leads to people being kind of careless with how they do rounding and truncation and stuff like that with the arithmetic, and not realizing that it matters. And it matters in different ways on different operations. And sometimes you need to have the arithmetic be rounding down, and sometimes you need to have it be rounding up, and the choice about which one you're picking is a security choice most of the time, right? And we have seen issues where even just rounding one direction the wrong way, like in Uniswap V1 way back, talk about going back to like 2018, 2019, I don't know, it was a long time ago. We did the formal modeling of Uniswap V1 constant product market maker as the first, large deployment of that sort of idea. And we found a rounding error. It was a simple rounding error that led to the user being able to basically pick arbitrary prices as the output that they would have the swap happen at, right? And it's just because of the way that these errors accumulate through the whole calculation that makes it possible. And of course, they fixed it and addressed it and stuff, but it was just kind of an eye opener at that point. We gave talks years ago about rounding errors. We gave talks, we gave more talks about rounding errors. It still seems to keep coming up. There's a recent protocol we audited where we found a bunch of rounding errors again. And I think there's a couple different classes of bugs, right? Like if you think about like early days Ethereum, there was like the reentrancy bug that led to the DAO hack, and then there were lots more reentrancy bugs after that. And then they started slowing down the reentrancy bugs, and I think that's because as the bugs are more common, we write better detectors for them. And also now with AI tools coming online, AI tools are able to see, hey, that's the same bug that I saw in another code base already, because they've already read most of the code bases anyway, right? And so when you have the really common bugs, we're getting better at kind of automatically flushing those ones out. And so the rounding errors, though, those ones are usually pretty specific to the logic of the given protocol, how the rounding is supposed to be done. So that one is a little bit trickier, I think, for these tools to catch. And then the other ones that we do see, because we also do like infrastructure level audits for like nodes and clients and some wallets, things like that, right? So that's a little bit different than smart contract security, but just logical errors, right? So like in a node, if it considers a block as, finalized and it's not finalized, that can be a serious security issue for the network, right? You can kind of trick a node into thinking a block is finalized. And those types of logical errors, again, these are pretty unique pieces of software, tailored to specific chains. And so even the AI tools, sometimes they're not catching these things because they haven't read a similar piece of software somewhere else or seen a similar bug or something like that. Of course, once the audit report's public, then now, of course, all the AI tools are going to read them all and they're going to be able to catch them in the future, which is great. That's awesome for everyone's security. But I think, I think moving forward, I would expect to see more of just the pure logical errors at the level of, what is the actual logic of the protocol, and less of the more specific, just coding level errors as we get better AI tools. And so that was kind of a long answer, but hopefully that helps.
Well, it makes so much sense, especially with the AI tools growing a lot. I would think that more people is building smart contracts with AI without knowing the technology at detail. So these is very specific problems that are very specific to the business. The AI won't know.
Yeah, many of the times it won't. But these AI tools are getting pretty good. Like people should be using them at least as a first line of defense, I think. I think it's important that people understand what can be done there. So
Everett, I was just going to ask, what sort of role do white hats play at the moment, do you think, in Web3? You sort of have like reporting bugs, bug bounties and that. Do they, I guess it's more like the psychology or philosophy of humans, but do you sort of see them playing an important role, and a lot of bugs sort of are discovered and protected behind the scenes as opposed to exploited directly?
I can tell you for sure there's lots of bugs protected and behind the scenes and rescued behind the scenes that are not exploited publicly. I don't have any hard numbers. I would be really curious to see what our number is, but I'm in various chats and stuff where people are, reporting these things and assigning war rooms and doing things like that. And it's very common to rescue funds before they get exploited fully. I think that's also the case in Web 2 as well. Actually, like a lot of there's 0 days that are discovered pretty frequently in lots of core libraries across big tech stacks, and they're usually reported. And I was actually listening to someone, I think it was one of the guys at Anthropic, was talking about using AI to build like biological weapons or something, and the dangers of that. And just wondering, like, why hasn't this happened yet? Why hasn't it been that someone has built like a massively dangerous biological weapon? I think at the core of it, most people aren't like trying to burn the system down. You know, like a lot of people are invested in the correct operation of the system, whatever that is. And also people like to build things, you know. So I don't know. I think a lot of people just don't want to see the world burn, but there definitely are black hats out there. And a lot of them, you know, when you're there, you know, a lot of them, it's their job, right? It's their state, their state sponsored actors, or they are working for other entities. And so that's a very dangerous thing, you know, when it's someone's job to try to find exploits. They're not necessarily going to exploit it immediately when they find it, right? They might put it in their own little piggy bank of exploits and just wait for the right moment to target the specific person or group that they're trying to target, right? So it's always a constant back and forth, you know. It's an arms race.
It's good to hear though that, because you always hear the headlines. Do you know what I mean? You always feel the headlines when something goes wrong, and there's a lot of stigma around Web3, around exploits or just scammers and bad actors in general. So you can kind of forget all the good stuff that happens because it's not a headline so much. You know what I mean? When things are protected, it's just BAU. It's just like a normal day.
Well, just a reminder, we are going to a giveaway for the best question here on any platform that you are looking at. If you are on X or YouTube, you can write your question, and at the end we will answer, and you may earn some money. So I wanted to ask now, Mark, if you have seen, like, I mean, just to make a little introduction to this, I love non-custodial. I think it's a very great way to manage the money. It's secure, but if it's non-custodial, I'm responsible for my actions, and if I make mistakes because maybe I don't know what I'm doing, it's complex to recover after a bad decision. So from a wallet perspective, have you seen these kind of stories? If you have one story to tell us, or how do you deal with this, would be great.
Yeah, no particular story comes to mind, to be honest. But I think we have like two worlds, right? You have like DeFi or blockchain, and then you have traditional finance, and you kind of think of them like these two worlds, and now we're connecting them together and things like that. I think that the recourse that you don't have in DeFi needs to be managed better for the user. You mean, like, and not necessarily a technical level, but I think that really where we're going is that you need to offer the DeFi utility, the benefit of DeFi, if it's yield, if it's payments via remittance, or if it's just trading like new assets 24/7 or whatever it is. There's benefit there the user wants, but it doesn't have to be like traditional finance or DeFi, and then let's connect them. I think that the way that it'll play out is that DeFi is just a new backend. You mean, like Swift is a backend that people don't interact with historically for remittance or overseas payments. You don't know anything about it. And how that's presented to the user, like, can be different ways. Like currently you have software that connects directly to that system. But I think that a hybrid model will sort of eventuate, and that's kind of like where we want to go. Like, how do you deliver like the UX, the customer service, and the risk management around all these benefits? And that's one of the first things we looked at when we integrated DeFindex. It was the first yield bearing product. We could talk about why we chose DeFindex in Hana. But we immediately started looking at what's insurance that we can wrap around this, because 12%, 15%, things like 17% yield is great, but like the users don't really care necessarily about the yield unless they know it's safe and secure and things like that. So, and that could be like on chain, but probably it's going to be off chain. So how do you actually offer a traditional finance offering, but the experience, the protection the user has is all what they're used to with sort of traditional finance. So let's say that's like off-chain insurance in that current example. So I actually don't think that non-custodial necessarily needs to have a no recourse sort of paradigm or way of operating, and that's kind of where we want to go in the future. I don't think I actually answered your question directly, but that's kind of that's what came to mind. Is like, I think like you're stating a problem that I don't think we have to live with in perpetuity. I think that's going to change, and that's how we view it. Obviously, when you look at these different models, then like regulation starts to come into it and things like that. It's not non-custodial in the way that we sort of maybe always think about it, but it is non-custodial in the way you're talking about it, is that your key is your sort of access in your assets.
Great. So if 1 million new non-technical users enter Web3 right now, what do you think will break first?
Their spirits.
What?
Their spirits, their will. Yeah. They'll run into like the first like time they have to sign a transaction or something, and it'll be painful, and they'll be like, I don't know about that.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you, Mark? What do you think, Gold?
Yeah, I think we sort of touched on it. It's the absence of recourse. I think that users do expect, you know what I mean? Like if we're talking about 1 billion users coming in, like they expect like that people will be held accountable. And if something goes wrong, someone gets my MasterCard. That's how we pay for stuff in Australia. Like I need to be able to sort of get that back. And I think that the solution to that is this emergence of CeFi and DeFi utility and CeFi sort of protection. And that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah.
Everything else is kind of like technical. It's like wallets and what I'm signing. And I think that's all true, but the path that's going down puts so much onus on the user. And if we kind of like have problems, and we've been in the industry for a while, do you know what I mean? Like if I think of my dad or my wife, or do you know what I mean? Like someone who's kind of just not in that world, it's not realistic that it's going to go that way.
Yeah, I do think that is something where as soon as you get, you open some position on DEX and you lose a bunch of money due to impermanent loss, and that's like the protocol working as designed, right? Or you do get scammed or you get rug pulled or something like that, and then you're like, oh, there's literally no one to call about this. That will be, that is kind of something that would turn away a lot of that first million users immediately, right? They'd be like, oh, there's not any, approach for me to even recover any of this. So.
Yeah. But then, so I think if you can offer that, you know what I mean? Like that's an LP in that example, but maybe a simpler example for a normal user, like yield is like kind of what drives a lot of finance. Then you give a native experience with the trusted protocols audited, you have insurance like of that particular protocol, say it's smart contract or whatever the scope is, then you can literally offer the way that users can access a product that has the same level of protection that we get. Yeah, like a Revolut or something like that. I think like that's where it gets super exciting. I think it's very different when we think of it as two worlds. You're kind of like Revolut world, they'll look after you there in the full stack, they'll do the recourse, or go download this software, go to this website, connected, and good luck. And you know what I mean? Like they're kind of two separate, the conversions will just naturally happen. And you kind of see it happening now already, you know what I mean?
Well, just a reminder, post your questions. We'll do a giveaway at the end. We are DeFindex. We provide infrastructure that enables wallets and apps to offer a yield through DeFi. Our focus is secure, transparent yield that wallets can easily integrate. So next topic. There was an incident last week or 2 weeks ago, actually. There was a price manipulation that tricked an oracle that involves several layers of things that happened. All the smart contracts were audited. All the smart contracts were have worked as expected, but there was there's still some vulnerability. So to understand this, we need to understand what's the liquidity, what liquidity means. So in a DEX and in a decentralized exchange, when there's low liquidity, the prices can move very fast with very little money. So the price of an asset can be easily manipulated. And if one of those assets can be used as collateral, then the lending protocols under that use that asset can be tricked to steal some money. So maybe you Everett, you have talked something about this, but what does this tell us about the limits of audits, of the layers of security that a protocol should focus on, and that kind of things?
Yeah. Well, I think, if you think about it from a perspective of each of the individual projects going to get their own audits, right? Then it seems very natural that this exploit would be missed, right? So you have, the DEX, right? Which was a blend. No, it wasn't. Blend was the lending protocol,
Right.
but there's SDEX that.
It's a Stellar Classic DEX.
Yeah. And it's publishing a price based on the amount of assets in each side of the pool, right? Totally reasonable thing for it to do, right? On the other side, you have someone who's taking that published price and using it as an oracle feed to feed other protocols, also totally reasonable thing to do. And then you have Blend consuming that oracle price feed and using it to set collateralization ratios and how much it is you can borrow against a given asset and stuff like that. Also, again, totally reasonable thing to do independently. And it's only when you look at the system as a whole that you realize, oh, there's an exploit here related to low liquidity environments on the DEX that let them push the price around. In this case, they 100x'd the price with just a few transactions. And then that propagates through to the lending protocol, and the lending protocol is then letting you borrow more against that collateral than it should be letting you borrow against that collateral. And they basically had no intention of paying back that borrow, basically, right? And so everything operating as expected, right? But the whole system put together doesn't work as expected. And this has actually happened a few times in DeFi history, and Ethereum is usually ahead of the curve on these things. So these type of price manipulation attacks don't happen as much in Ethereum because they've built in ways to address them a long time ago. Like Chainlink right now has a very sophisticated Oracle system that would not allow a malformed price like this through, because they do things like check the liquidity of the DEXs that they're pulling prices for, or they do averages between different price feeds in order to make a price feed, or they do time weighted averages if you only have one price feed, or they have ways to safeguard against this, because this was an exploit that showed up suddenly when someone realized, hey, we have an ability to put these different protocols together and make an exploitable scenario that we didn't realize before. Another example of that is when people first started taking out flash loans, right? So flash loans they weren't something that was in the mental model of auditors before the first flash loans showed up and started exploiting protocols, right? And so it was something where you might have a protocol that has something that seems like it's a bug. Maybe there's a bug in the protocol, and you're like, well, in order to exploit this bug, the user would have to create a really large amount of capital out of thin air in order to be able to exploit the bug. And it just seems unlikely that they would do that, right? They'd have to move a lot of money to do that. And so you might categorize it as like a high difficulty bug to exploit, but then suddenly flash loans are something someone thinks of and comes up with the idea for. And now this thing that was a high difficulty thing to exploit is now low difficulty. Someone can just take out a flash loan, do the exploit, and then pay back their loan all in the same transaction. And so that changed the security model that you had to analyze these protocols with. So a lot of, when you first run into something like this, where it's a new type of exploit, if you catch it as a potential type of exploit, you got lucky, right? Like, you got lucky that you were able to think about it before the attacker was able to think about it. But after that, once it's public and known, it's no longer luck, right? It's about having, security partners that have that kind of group communal knowledge in their heads when they're reviewing the code and reviewing the protocol, and they would know they would talk to Blend, and they would say, hey, Blend, like, it's dangerous to accept just a single DEX's price feed as an Oracle feed, right? Because you run the risk of that pool going into a low liquidity environment and the price being manipulated, right? So that would be something that they would say, like, maybe you should also, in addition to taking the price feed from that DEX, you should also take, okay, what's the current liquidity status? And if it's low enough, you freeze that market. You don't allow anyone to make borrows against that collateral anymore because you don't have an accurate price for it, right? So those are just some ideas about what you can do, but it really is hard to imagine every scenario ahead of time. And at the end of the day, what you're paying a security firm or a security partner to do is to do what black hats would do, which is to try to find exploits in your protocol at a rate faster than they do it, right? And so you're paying them, hey, find all the exploits that you think could be found in my protocol over the next 2 years in this 6 weeks instead, right? And then, hopefully after 2 years passes, no one has found another exploit in your protocol, and you're ready to launch the next version anyway, right? Like, you're moving on to a different piece of code at that point, right? So there's again another roundabout answer, but maybe it was helpful.
Yeah, and from a wallet perspective, Mark, how do you communicate this kind of problems? Well, after the incident, everything was restored, and at the end, nothing happened from the user's perspective. So how do you communicate this to get the hug that users may need, or like that kind of things?
Yeah, I think that users want to know how they're affected. I think that's like what they care about. I mean, not necessarily the majority of users aren't interested in necessarily like what is going on, but just how it affects them. So I think transparency is super important, because one of our biggest assets is the trust that we've built with our users. But that starts not necessarily in the incident. It starts with us deciding to integrate DeFindex in the first place, and that decision-making process. So because we've done that, I think this is definitely a good story. This is not a good thing that happened. That would be wrong. But I mean, if you look at it holistically, there was a bad actor and multiple teams came together and handled the incident really well. And they communicated really well to their users, like all the wallets involved. We're obviously not the only wallet. And I think so that's actually a success story of the chain, the protocols involved, DeFindex, and all like the wallets involved as well. So, but I think it's just managing trust. I think the first thing you need to do is be honest about the situation, but also communicate not technically what's going on, but what it means for the user. So we obviously worked with your team at DeFindex and was across sort of the incident management of everything going on. And we just wanted to let users know as soon as possible, once we've done our assessments, what's going on and what it means for them, and communicating as much as possible, but also just not trying to give too much information. Kind of like with the UX, don't give them too many options or too much stuff, because that's overwhelming and it doesn't mean anything to them. They just want to know what's going on and what do I have to do. So generally we went out and said, this is what's happening. Like, users will be made whole. You don't have to do anything for now, and we'll keep you updated. Obviously, we had a bit more hand-holding for users who wanted to reach out via support and have the conversations that they wanted to have at their level. But a public-facing level is a very simple message. And that's exactly how it played out. And I think everyone did a great job.
Great. Yeah, I also think we did a great job, like everyone working together, and the issue was solved after the incident. And so now for designing a resilient infrastructure, well, you talked about formal verification, threat models. So when do you think, or how's the process of building a resilient system, or what's your approach for building a resilient system that can recover or can prevent and recover and stay healthy?
Yeah. One example I like to bring out to explain to people why so our company is all formal verification experts, right? And so, but we don't do formal verification for all of our clients, right? We do sometimes fuzzing, or we do penetration testing, or just code review. It depends on the specific needs of the situation, but somehow all of us being formal verification experts makes us better at those tasks. And so I want to, and you don't have to be a formal verification expert to benefit from that, right? Like, it's something where it's a mindset with how you approach designing and building systems that improves the overall quality of the output at the end of the day. And that mindset is not as common in the software development industry as it is in other engineering disciplines, right? And to give a really simple example, imagine you're going to build a bridge, right? You're going to build a bridge that goes over a river or something, and you're going to let cars go over the bridge, right? No one would take you seriously if you said, well, let's just try building it out of toothpicks or something, or let's try building it out of something, light and weak, and let's just send a car on
like a prototype, like a hackathon bridge.
Yeah. Let's make a prototype, and then let's iterate, and let's do the agile method, and let's let it break, and let's fix it, and let's test it. No one would accept that, right? Because it's too expensive, right? It's too expensive to try and fail, and to try and fail, and to try and fail. When you build that bridge, it's got to be right the first time, right? Like, it has to carry the cars over it every single time without failure the first time, right? And so what engineers do is they formally model the bridge, right? So they'll make a plan or a diagram of the river profile, right? They'll design what the rocks on either side look like that they can anchor the bridge in on either side. They'll maybe make a pier in the middle that supports the middle of the bridge. They'll do stress analysis and computer software to understand how much load they can put on each different part of the bridge. And they do all of that analysis before even laying the first brick for building the bridge, right? And so if we can take some of that mindset and apply it to software, then we can build software that, for the most part, doesn't fail, right? It comes correct the first time. And that's what the entire formal verification mindset is about, right? It's about first starting from the design and the analysis and the modeling. Okay, tell me, and that's where our particular engagements with our clients start. We usually spend the first third, so if it's a 3-week engagement, maybe 1 week. If it's an 8-week engagement, maybe 2 weeks, right? Just talking to our clients and saying, hey, what is your protocol supposed to do? What is it that are all the interacting components? Let's make a map of this. Let's understand the design of the whole system as a whole before we start diving into the code, because then that changes how we approach the code, right? We approach it with a lot more security. Well, so people can do this themselves. They can start down and they can make sure they write a very detailed specification from the start of all the important things that their protocol is supposed to do, like users' balances shouldn't go negative, even just simple things like that, right? And now with AI, a really cool thing you can do is, if you have that specification before you begin writing the code, you take that specification, commit it to your repository, and you ask Claude, whatever you're using, right? Like, hey, this new feature I just implemented, does it still respect the specification? And at least then you're checking every time you're implementing a new feature, like, was my, if it comes back and it says, well, no, not really, it doesn't really respect the specification. Okay, either there's a mistake in the code, you made a, there's some sort of bug in the code, or there's a mistake in your specification. But you would want to know that. You'd want to know like, oh, like actually I messed up, and it is okay for the user's balance to go negative for a little bit or something like that in your specification before moving on to the next step, which is a weird example. But so the point is, that formal methods mindset where you start with the specification and you write that out, and then you move to developing the actual code and the system and all the different components around it, right? And then you check, does the code implement the specification correctly? And this can just be a manual check. It can just be look at the specification, look at the code, look at the specification, look at the code. Just that improves the quality of the software that is output immediately, right? It makes it a lot easier to audit the software. You have kind of this paper trail of this is what the software is supposed to do along the whole way. And then it also makes it easier to do full formal verification if that's what we want to do at the end as well. So that's kind of what I would encourage people to take away from formal verification. It's not some magic technique that's going to solve all your problems, right? It's one technique for showing the quality of a piece of software, right? But getting yourself to know this mindset of thinking of specification and modeling and analysis while you're writing code will make it so that your code is just higher quality from the start.
But that has to be like an ongoing process, right, Everett? Because you talked before about the composability, which is one of the benefits of DeFi. But when you start stacking these protocols on top of each other or linking them together, and then one thing changes, if it's like just liquidity changes or the protocol changes, it affects things upstream. So it doesn't, even with that method, it doesn't sound like it's a set and forget. It's like an iterative, not iterative, but it's an ongoing process.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not like, with the bridge example, right? You build a bridge to cross the river, and then more people move into the town, and then you need another bridge and you have to do it somewhere else. And, like it is something where you have to, it's a process, right? But if you integrate just a little bit of this into your coding process early, you can get a lot of benefits down the road. Because if you think about it, another example I like to give someone is that, like, when you give Claude a prompt to generate a piece of code for you, if you tell it like, hey, go make me an application that, I don't know, like orders me my favorite food every day at the right time, right? Like that's a silly request, right? But it's gonna do something for you. It's gonna make you some sort of application, right? But the first mistake it makes and deviates from your thing is gonna mess every other choice up after that, right? And so it's just going to go off on some crazy tangent. We've all seen when we're asking these AI bots to code things, they just go off on some crazy tangent. You have to wait, whoa, stop, like back up. Let's go back to here, correct course. Let's go on there. It's the same with bugs in code and with bugs in the design of a protocol. As soon as you make one mistake, it compounds. It makes it so that it's easier to make that next mistake and easier to make that next mistake. And so it's good to catch them as early in the process as possible. And the only way to know what a mistake even is to start with a specification of what correct is, right?
Yep.
So you have to try is basically what it is. You have to try, and there will be failures, and then you learn from them and you try again, and so.
Great. It's good to have this trial on modeling and auditing rather than making cars fall. Mark, and I wanted to ask you also, for resilient system, you need good providers. What are your criteria for choosing providers to integrate and have a resilient application as Hana is?
Yeah, I think for us, it just starts with team trust. So like with DeFindex, we've been working with the team for like about 2 years before we did the integration. I can't remember exactly when it was. We first sort of started working with Esteban and that. So I think trust of the team, and then the tech comes after that, like the security of the tech, and all the more standard sort of checks, a technical analytical frame. So team trust, then sort of trust of the technology, and then the utility for the user. So like, what's the benefit for the user? So we believe, we have trust in the team, we have trust in the tech, and we think it's going to benefit our users. And then I guess it's probably around how we present this to the user. We sort of talked about how we always lean towards more native integrations, and we think that's the path forward. And we also don't necessarily, we're trying to service benefits for the user, but we don't necessarily endorse that the user should use this yield or swap this token or make this payment via this chain. We're just trying to make it easy for users to do things in DeFi. So that's kind of at a very high level how I look at it.
Well, just a reminder, we are DeFindex, the earnings infrastructure for financial apps. Post your questions here. We have these two amazing experts on Web3. So take advantage of this, post your questions. We will do a giveaway. Enjoy these two experts on Web3. So for the future, we are seeing a massive improvement of AI these days. So AI is making everything more secure, or the attacks are increasing, or everything is less secure? What do you think, for both of you?
Well, I think long term it makes things more secure, probably. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to predict those types of things, right? But I mean, the most recent conference I was at, for the past year and a half, every conference is talking AI. Everyone's building AI tools for security. There's one AI tool for security we use called Almanacs that I've found is pretty good. There are other tools that have other approaches, but I found Almanacs is kind of the easiest one to just try it, get a result back, try to use the result for doing something. But I think, and it kind of tries to do an audit for you. Basically, it does like some sort of simple audit of the code base for you. But I think what we're gonna see with AI tooling is it's going to make all the same mistakes that we have trained it to make, And so if we're telling AI to develop in this iterative way that doesn't build safe bridges, that's how it's going to develop, right? But if we tell it instead, like, hey, develop by first making a specification and then thinking about making tests and then making the code and then checking that the code implements the test and then check, and do it in the correct order, basically, then it'll do good, right? So one of the things I'm really excited about is just AI as an assistant in the developer process, where it's keeping those security things in mind for you, right? And so you may not have in your mind when you're making your lending protocol that you need to be aware that single source price oracles sourced from DEXs are a risk, but the AI can know that, right? It can know that, and it can remind you, and it can say, hey, here's a link to where this happened on Ethereum 3 years ago and was a risk then, and you should take this as a serious risk now, right? And so that's something where I see a lot of value coming from AI. But ultimately, when we're building these, I mean, other than the whole where people are making Moltbook style, agents only types of environments where people are trying to have their agents all talk to each other and stuff, which I question myself the usefulness of that, but I don't know, I'm not an AI expert, right? But ultimately, we're building all these things for us, right? We're building them for our quality of life and our enjoyment and our purpose in this world, right? And so we're going to build the tools that will make it easier for us to make code, that will make it more secure for us to make code, whatever it is. Those are the tools that we're going to build, and that's what we're building at Runtime Verification. We have our own internal AI assist tools that basically just speed up the audit process, right? They remind our auditors of the important things to remember, and they gather information about the code base for our auditors to kind of see in one place, basically, but we don't ever trust it, right? The same, and that's actually the same as what we do with auditors. We always put 2 auditors on every engagement because we don't trust the auditors, right? Like we do because they're our friends and we work with them, right? But like we make sure that like whatever it is that this auditor did gets checked, right? Gets checked by the other auditor and vice versa, right? And the same with the AI tools. Whatever it does, you have to check its work. And so if the cost of checking its work is higher than the cost of just doing it yourself, then the AI wasn't very useful, right? But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's faster for the AI to do the work and for us to check it than for us to do it ourselves. So I think AI is going to make things more secure. I think it's going to make the development lifecycle faster. I think we're in this initial phase of AI deployment where it's made it vastly easier to write code. Like it's really good at writing code fast, but it has not reached even, I would say, junior level engineer code quality yet. That's what we've seen from reviewing AI code bases, is that there are just things in them that you would expect any engineer not to do when submitting pull requests or submitting whatever. And so, it will take a little bit of time, but I do think that AI will be writing code at the junior level eventually, and then the mid engineer, and then the senior level. And it will be assisted by tools where we tell the AI, like, hey, these are my properties, these are my specifications, these are how I want the protocol to act. And then it uses that while writing code to make sure it's not violating those properties as it goes. So.
Yes, awesome. And you, Mark, have you seen like AI or scammers doing AI phishing for your users, or do you use AI tools for security?
Yeah, I think well, you just said, like, AI is a tool, right? Like, I think it's not necessarily a solution, but it's just a tool the users can use. And as you talked before, like, it can be used in a good context or a bad context, like by a good actor or a bad actor, or a white hat or a black hat. Definitely think it's going to speed things up. It's just going to bring everything to the surface more, but it just depends on who's using it and how. So yeah, I think when it comes to like the future of wallets and things like that, we generally think in 2 buckets. You have more like an expert user who maybe will necessarily know that they're using blockchain. So an experience where they go to websites and they sign transactions and they need to know like what they're doing. That's like an expert user to us, and like AI can assist with that and say, this is what this transaction will do, but it's just giving them confidence in that context of what's happening post signing the data. Our users we're more focused on the market of people who don't necessarily know that they're using blockchain. They just want to do something, not necessarily what's going on underneath. Like if you go to like a website now, you got like the HTTP protocol, then you got like the SSL protocol that runs on top, and all this other stuff, and the markup language. And users don't care. They want to go to Facebook and say, like, look at my food, or whatever it is they do. Like, they don't care about that. So we think with those users, like, it's just keep it simple. Like, keep it simple. Like, give them what they want in the most simplest form possible. Not like the most options. They just want to do something really simply. So they kind of like the 2 buckets and kind of how we do it.
Yeah, another thing I thought about with AI security as well is that the audit contests, right? They're getting flooded with AI submissions these days, and it's something where then you're just sucking up a lot of actual security researchers' time with reviewing these AI submissions, which end up being duplicate or just spurious or something like that. Maybe that will actually decrease the security of the ecosystem overall. But in the war of the black hats versus the white hats, AI in the hands of black hats is you get a lot more bang for your buck, right? Because it only has to work once, right? It only has to work once for a black hat to be like, oh, okay, look, I found an exploit that is workable. But with the white hats or the people who are reviewing the security exploits or something like that, they have to somehow build defensive tools instead that are able to, eliminate all potential errors, right? So it amplifies a black hat's ability to find exploits, significantly more than it amplifies, I think, a white hat's ability at this moment. So that is something that is maybe leading to less security. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't know how will be the future, but I'm pretty confident that the tools will be improving and secure. Every time it will be harder to exploit protocols or applications. Well, we are arriving to the end. We are DeFindex, the earning infrastructure for financial apps. We are answering the questions of the audience. So a question from DJ Mixes now. What type of records and safety nets can realistically be implemented for non-tech Web3 user base? You have a...
I don't know that much. I guess insurance, but I think Hana Wall is better poised to answer this one.
Sorry, you cut out. Can you read the question again? I didn't hear.
Yeah. What type of records of safety net can realistically be implemented for the non-tech Web3 user base?
Yeah, I think if you're obviously going off-chain, then insurance is the options that we're looking at, and they do exist today, but it's like very early, I guess. This is more like the direction that we're going. And then I think when it comes to on-chain, I think it's the partners that you're working with, and that comes back to the trust, you know what I mean? The team that you're working with and their partners upstream, if it's composable, like DeFindex is built upon other lending markets. Yeah, so it's communication with those teams, trust with those teams, and how they react. You know what I mean? And there was recourse in the context of the recent incident that happened a couple of weeks ago, and everything was made whole. So it's the partners that you work with the protocols, and then I think, but if you go off chain, then it's insurance options.
Yeah. I remember you also mentioned that using Hana inside customer service and not going asking for help on X, or I guess you don't DM first, so this kind of things also prevent a lot of the problems with Web3, or maybe most of the time I think the problems goes from human engineering more than a bug itself. And another question for MJ: will we see some agentic help inside Hana?
It's not on our current roadmap at the moment.
Okay, great.
No, we have looked at, you mean, very basic, sort of more from an onboarding perspective of Marsh, which is our marshmallow in the background, which is our mascot. But more from like an onboarding, like a new user perspective of understanding how they can interact with crypto, and we sort of done a few sort of internal tests around that. So we have explored that, but yeah, risk versus reward and other priorities, it's not something that we're looking at right now.
Well, we are going to the end. We are DeFindex.
We have one more. We have one more question.
Well, one more question. Yeah, sure. Do you think the future of DeFi security will rely more on better code or better risk monitoring? Whoa.
I mean, I personally think both, right? Like I think both are proving to be really important now. A lot of the times when white hats are able to rescue funds ahead of times, it is because there is a monitor that basically alerts them that, hey, something's screwy, something needs to be addressed, and then someone's able to step in and figure out what it is that needs to be addressed. But ultimately, if there's a bug in the code and it's deployed and it's public, right? Like, there's all the incentive in the world to try to find that bug and to exploit it, right? And so we have to have better code, and we have to have good risk monitoring for when we miss bugs, and the bugs do make it into production. So I think ultimately both will continue to be a part of DeFi security as they have been up until now. So,
do you have any advice over it? Because I know previously we've sort of found, we're not white hats or anything, but we've come across things, on-chain exploits. And then what's the best thing to do? Or do you advise users who kind of do find these exploits? You rescue the funds yourself? Do you try and contact the team? Because even if you try and rescue the funds yourself and you get the mempool wrong, depending on the chain, someone might mev it. If you contact the team, that can not necessarily be easy to do. Like if they don't necessarily trust you or just getting the right person. Yeah. So is there like a best practice for someone who kind of finds these things but doesn't necessarily do it all the time or know how to?
Yeah.
What's the best action?
I think it really depends on the situation. If it's something where it's like imminently exploitable and it's going to happen in the near future and it's a lot of money, it may be better to try to rescue the funds yourself. Generally, I would not personally recommend doing that. And I would recommend trying to get a hold of the team or get a hold of the auditor or get a hold of the L1 or get a hold of someone that is able to put you in touch with the right person so you can demonstrate your exploit to them. Because you get into kind of a legal gray area as soon as you start like rescuing the funds yourself and trying to do the right thing, quote unquote. You don't know how that team is going to respond, or how the auditor, you don't know how the people involved are going to respond, right? And so even if you do it with the best of intentions, it can lead to kind of a nasty situation for yourself, right? So probably better to try to get a hold of someone and to let them make a plan and include you in that if it makes sense or not. That would be my advice. There are some teams out there, at least for Ethereum. There's like the SEAL 911 team, and probably for a large exploit on other chains, they would get involved as well, where they will do the forensics and make a rescue plan for you. They'll work with, teams that can get them past MEV bots, or they'll work with a MEV team to make sure that they're able to get their transaction in appropriately and not get front run on their transaction, something like that, right? So they have the resources needed to make those rescues safely, basically. And they also have frequently the legal frameworks in place to make the rescue and not get into that kind of gray, murky area of, like I was trying to do a good thing, but I, did effectively steal a bunch of money in order to save money, save it for, it's like just kind of a gray area to be in. So unless you're on the full, white hat route or the black hat route, and you're working with a shop that does that and is known for doing that, I would recommend probably getting a hold of someone that does that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, we arrived to the end. Congratulations for the giveaway winners that made questions. Thank you, Everett. Thank you, MJ. It was an amazing conversation. At DeFindex, we provide the infrastructure that enables wallets and apps to offer automated DeFi yield through the decentralized smart contracts. You can visit DeFindex.io to learn more about. And if you want to integrate DeFindex, don't hesitate to contact us. Some final words. Yeah.
No, but I appreciate you having us on the call. It's always a pleasure to talk to the Palta Labs folks and to DeFindex. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us on the call, Francisco. And yeah, I think just a thank you to your team with the way that you handled the incident. Your comms in the back end was great. Your technical support was great through the process. Thanks to the Blend team and the Stellar team as well. I think we got to see what happens in the background and how that's managed. And I think that's just given us confidence to lean into your offering, into the ecosystem, based on the way it was handled. So yeah, I think it was great. So thanks for having us, and yeah, looking forward to the future.
Great. Just let's do a pose for a final picture. I love the hair. Yeah. Great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.